collaborate and find some solution. Ma'am, if you can run the presentation. So I think what Mr. PK Das said, and I think that flowed quite nicely into Vivek's presentation. Uh, we've always come from this philosophy of zero wastage. I think most people born and bred and brought up in Bombay probably have that. You're fighting for water, you're fighting for space in the office. Everything is a fight. What is 400 square feet, one bed in Bombay is a bedroom size in other cities. So this DNA of designing things with zero wastage, I think, is something which is quite well ingrained into our system, and we'd like to talk about it today. So it's very clear that with the cost of land, cost of FSI, I think Vivek amply demonstrated in today's presentation that while there is always an aspiration to stay closer to the ground, most city centers and most cities end up being vertical because of many other factors that push and keep pulling at the envelope, and because of that you have high-rise construction. In addition to that, there's obviously cost of approvals, and all of this makes high-rise buildings essentially unaffordable. So hence this constant debate between, if it's high-rise, then it's expensive to build, it's expensive to maintain. But yes, when you actually go and live in the high-rise on some certain floor, you're a lot happier because you have better air, better ventilation, better light. So the question, at least what I was told for today's presentation, is how do you make high-rise buildings affordable? So I think the mantra here is to consume less and create more. So I can't say that looking at my weight, but I think there are healthy people who are nice and thin, and there are not so healthy people who are not so nice and thin. And I think in some way or the other that also applies to buildings, because if you start looking at every aspect of building design, be it structure, the perimeter, the column ratios, parking efficiency, how you place your electricals, what are your door window ratios, not just from the point of view, you reduce it becomes cheaper, but what is the most appropriate sizing, how do you lay out toilets that can be cheap, and how do you, at the end of the day, how do you plan apartments and units such that there is essentially zero area that goes into passages. I think Vivek touched upon this in his BDD design. So it pretty much starts with the shape of the building and the aspect ratio, the width to the height. And what we've found, and I think these are principles which, being an architect, you always want to talk to your engineer, your structural engineer second. Mr. Vatve is in the room today, so he probably knows what I'm talking about. But for high-rise buildings in the affordable segment, I think that's the first phone call that needs to be made before you actually start to design the buildings, because we have this tendency in India of designing lopsided structures and then extruding it either for 4 floors, 7 floors or 70 floors. It's the same extrusion. It's just that the staircase becomes fatter and the number of lifts increase. But I think and I think a lot of architects are now are looking at this very carefully. But if you're looking at cost-effective construction, I'm purely talking from the point of view of cost here, with some bit leaning on quality of space. I think we have to move away from this very infinite perimeter buildings that keep jogging in and out, because we are unable to plan the inner spaces better. I think you can plan inner spaces better while still getting clean external lines. And again, while this looks like an engineering presentation, it's actually not. It's the subject of the matter is how do you make tall buildings less costly. So I think cost-conscious design for high-rise does in some sense require a central core that works for a lateral system. It does require external perimeter of building which has less surface area, leading to less construction area, less concrete, less plaster, less paint, all of it. It doesn't take much to sit on a plan and try and work out how the lateral system can align with your external walls. Yes, certain bedrooms you may compromise a little left and right, but if one applies enough time on the plan, the outcome does come better. With that, you have lesser beam spans, you have thinner slabs, and you're able to take that structure, most of it through. You automatically have a more cost-effective building. And once you reach a point where you worked out a plan that works in that way, I think that's when you can start to have these conversations with the contractor on different methods of construction, be it precast, be it tunnel form, etc., keeping in mind all our Indian issues like chhajjas and weather protections and all of that. I think it's not that it's just not possible. So we try and focus on many of these things. And finally, coming to the actual apartment itself, I think passage is welcome because it gives you privacy in the house. It gives you the chance of dividing the public spaces from the private spaces. But we are talking about low cost, high rise construction for the middle class. And I think we've grown up in India sharing bathrooms and having separate WC, separate bath. So I really don't see why the passage needs to be such an integral part of every residential plan that gets made. And then there are the finer details like the column grid in the parking, and it's nice to see a lot of youngsters in this room. We just put these big circular columns and say, okay, fine, it's done, the parking layout is done. But it's the space behind the circular column which gets wasted. So you narrow the column, deepen it. Structural engineer is also happy, and you save the delta between being at 35 square meter per car going down to 27. That delta lies in all of that, and it's not to save the client's money, it's actually to build less. And in that outcome, everyone benefits from that outcome. Your ground coverage and footprint of the buildings also tend to reduce. Try and take as many apartments as you can down to the street level without trying to float. That also helps the streetscape in a city like Bombay. Otherwise, you'll end up with this podium block. And yes, I think as architects, we've all had our fair share of buildings we're proud of and buildings we're not proud of. But that doesn't mean that you can't change the way you think and do something differently going forward. So these are just some small case studies. Clients that came to us with plans made internally in their own office or by some other architect, and how we were able to give them a different plan with a lesser aspect ratio, a lesser kg per square foot. And again, I'll repeat here that it's not about saving the client's money, it's about doing the right thing, and then the outcome sort of starts to follow suit. So these are some and a lot of these plans are done within our own office, and then we realized that we could actually change the shape and do something a little different. Mr. Vatwe is there in this room. This is a plan that we did with him. This is the first plan that we did on the left. I think he must have told us for at least 3 years, don't do this plan. But then we modified it, and then look at the result to the right, the aspect ratio, the kg per square foot. And it's still, if you go to the unit plan, it's a fantastic unit plan. So yeah, this is a case study of another project, but that's essentially what I wanted to state today. Thank you very much, Vivek, for giving me this platform. And I think you will have to decide who speaks next. Thank you.